Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto get ignored by his teammates and met Anko and he fall in love her part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Uzumaki Naruto sighed in frustration and weariness. It had been 2 weeks since he had finally graduated from the ninja academy, albeit in unorthodox fashion, and his life was not what he had always hoped and dreamed that it would be. The first blow had been when the teams were announced and he realized that what he had hoped would become his new family consisted of 2 teammates who either hated or disregarded him and a sensei that wasn't much better than them. He had pulled himself out of that slump by reminding himself that all he would have to do to escape the dysfunctional team would be get strong enough to enter the next Chunin exams and advance in rank. After that he would be reassigned and his life would be back on track. This consolation lasted approximately 15 minutes into the team's first training session. His sensei was blatantly favoring the Uchiha like he worshipped the damn ground the stuck-up boy walked on. His other teammate on the other hand, actually did. Naruto had actually caught her hugging a bench that the genius had sat on, as if she were hugging him by conjunction. After managing to shake off both his rage and disgust seriously, that bench thing was sick. Naruto had been resigned to training by himself as he always had. This too seemed to be too good for the blonde, as he was quickly reprimanded by Kakashi for not following his instruction of, "Wait over there, I'll deal with you when I'm done with Sasuke." Which brings us back to his current position of sighing. That training session was 10 days ago and every day since then Naruto had arrived at the training grounds at the allotted time, since he'd been reprimanded when he was 5 minutes late one day, waited the 2 hours for his sensei to show up whilst trying and failing to block out the incessant chatter of the pink-haired banshee. When Kakashi did finally arrive, he would move the 20 or so paces to his spot, where he would sit for the next 4 hours and watch the Uchiha and his brown nosers train. Finally, after no recognizable signal, he snapped. "Fuck this. I don't care if that lazy, Uchiha-loving son of a bitch does report me to G-san, I'm out of here," he declared internally before getting up and running off. Not that anyone even noticed. He had left training ground 7 hours ago and since then had been wandering around the village looking for a free training ground or even park where he could try and figure how the hell he was going to teach himself to become a powerful shinobi. He chuckled bitterly at the thought. "'Cause everyone knows that all the best ninja trained themselves," he thought sarcastically. "Maybe I should go see G-san for help. No, he'd just send me back to Kakashi and the brigade." The young blonde's thoughts came to a halt as he stopped in front of a fence that seemed to be surrounding a large, dense forest. Training ground 44. Doesn't look like anyone has been in here in a while. Oh well, that suits me all the better, he declared as he leapt over the gate, ignoring the graffiti scribbled under the sign, "The Forest of Death. Do not enter." Naruto couldn't hide the bright smile that adorned his face as he gracefully leapt through the he trees of his new training ground. "This place is perfect," he thought happily, before suddenly coming to a complete stop. "What's that noise?" he whispered out loud as he tried to discern the nature and source of the strange sound. "It sounds like someone is crying," he realized as he got closer to the sound. The sound was painfully familiar to the blonde, bringing up a multitude of visions of crying himself to sleep at night, of being alone and afraid with no one to help him, of the desperate overwhelming yearning for the comfort of another. Shaking his head to rid himself of the painful memories and feelings, Naruto increased his pace and soon found himself in a clearing, about 100 yards across with a stream flowing down one side. Sitting against a tree, with her legs pulled tightly to her chest and her arms wrapped around them, was the sobbing form of a woman. Her shoulder-length violet hair was strewn about her head as her body convulsed violently from her weeping. Her position brought on another torrent of memories within the blonde, this time of him as an 8-year-old. He was huddled in the back of his closet, curled in the fetal position and trying to keep the mob that had burst into his apartment from hearing his frightened whimpers. But it was for naught. Soon he heard the footsteps drawing closer and the horrifying click as his closet door was opened. He once again shook his head as he tried to forget the events that had occurred on his 8th birthday. He looked to the hunched figure and steely resolve filled his sky-blue eyes. She won't have to suffer alone like I did, he promised internally as he approached the woman slowly. When he was finally within arm's reach of the woman, he was about to wrap her up in a hug, when the sound of a twig snapping echoed throughout the clearing. Before Naruto could even blink, she was up and facing him with kunai in hand. Who are you? What the fuck are you doing here? She yelled, her tone loaded with killer intent despite her tear-stained and puffy face. Naruto raised his hands in what he hoped was a pacifying manner. Whoa, relax. I was just walking around when I heard your crying and decided to come find out what was wrong. He was going to continue, but was cut off when he felt himself pinned against a tree with the woman's kunai at his throat. I don't know what the fuck you're trying to pull, kid, but I am Mitarashi Anko, feared interrogator and special Junin, and I do not cry. You got that, punk, she roared, sending all the animals within a mile fleeing. 99 times out of 100 when in his current situation, Naruto would have been quaking in fear and saying his prayers. This however was not one of those 99 times. With how close the two now were to each other, he couldn't help but look into her eyes. They were a strange golden brown color and didn't appear to have any pupils. But what really caught his eye was the depth of sorrow and loneliness that they held just below the shallow mask of anger. They're the same as mine, only with a different mask, he thought to himself. Unknown to him was that the woman was having similar thoughts. Who the hell is this kid? His eyes have even more pain and loneliness than mine. It was then that she noticed the whisker-like scars on his face. Oh, the Kyuubi brat, that explains it. She thought with a mental sigh, but was pulled out of her revelry by a sudden movement from the blonde. Naruto, having noticed that she had blanked out, chose to take advantage of the opportunity and quickly leant forward, outstretching his arms and pulling her into a tight hug. Anko was too shocked to say anything or offer any resistance as the boy pulled her into a loving embrace. What is with this kid? She thought to herself, whilst trying to work up the will to escape the unfamiliar, intimate moment. Despite everything in her telling to resist the hold, she couldn't help but get caught up in the comfort and warmth of the boy's innocent gesture. Anko was once again pulled from her thoughts, though this time it was by a low gurgling sound coming from the kid. Perverted bastard, she yelled as she quickly freed herself from his grasp and leapt back, taking up a defensive stance with her kunai again, surprised to find it covered in fresh blood. Oh fuck! She exclaimed quietly, slowly looking back to the boy. What she saw made her heart stand still. He had collapsed against the tree holding his throat, which was now sporting a gaping wound and gushing blood like a fountain. She quickly dropped the knife and leapt to his side, frantically trying to stop the bleeding. Fuck kid, I'm so sorry, I wasn't paying attention and my body just moved when you came at me like that. Oh god kid, please don't die. She pleaded desperately, watching in horror as the light faded from his eyes. Fuck, I've gotta get him to the hospital quick. The frantic Kunoichi exclaimed as she picked him up and vanished in a swirl of leaves, praying to whoever would listen that the kid would pull through. Naruto awoke to find himself in a dungeon or leaky basement of some kind, laying in a puddle of what he seriously hoped was water. Ah, so the brat finally makes an entrance. And here I was starting to think you were never going to pay me a visit, taunted a deep, almost demonic-sounding voice. Naruto sat up to find himself in front of a huge pair of gates, which appeared to be held together by a piece of paper with the word, seal, written on it. Oh shit. Naruto cursed under his breath. The fox just chuckled at the boy's reaction. Do you know who I am, little one? Why yeah, why you're the nine-tailed fox, lord of all the demons, he stuttered back as a reply. Kyuubi gave an amused snort. Not bad kid, you're smarter than I thought you'd be. Naruto shrugged. Having decided the fox apparently didn't mean him any harm, he started to relax. When you learn you have something sealed inside you, you tend to wanna learn about it, so I read some books on you that I found one time when I snuck into the library disguised as the Uchi. Kyubi laughed deeply. Ah yes, if I remember correctly, you checked out some books on how to come out of the closet, under his name, one of my favorite pranks. Naruto laughed at the memory, then realized something. Wait, if you know about that, does that mean that you have access to my thoughts and memories? He asked worriedly. To put it simply, yes I do. Kyubi answered plainly. What the fuck? So you just sit here all the time looking through my private thoughts and memories? That's just plain sick. Naruto yelled angrily, feeling thoroughly violated. Relax, Kit. I never go into your more personal stuff, when I can help it. The demon replied almost nervously. What do you mean, when you can help it? What have you been looking at, Fox? The blonde demanded. Kyubi sighed. He really didn't want to get into this with the kid. Look, long story short, as a form of punishment designed by the fourth Hokage, the seal allows me to experience some of what you are going through on the outside. The catch is, it only lets me feel the negative things, so whenever you're sad or have been hurt I feel the same thing. He just trailed off after this, as if he was remembering a particularly horrific memory. I'm so sorry, Kit. In your short life you have experienced more pain than the rest of this god-forsaken village put together. And all of it is because of me. I'm so sorry, Naruto. The fox then lowered its head to the ground in an act of submission. Naruto could only watch, totally speechless, as the most powerful creature the world had ever known, bowed to him as if asking him forgiveness for all the suffering he had caused. Look, to be totally honest, I don't know if I'll ever be able to trust you, let alone forgive you, but I can promise you that I will try. The fox quickly raised its head to look at the boy, and Naruto could have sworn that he saw a tear run down the giant fox's cheek. Thank you, Naruto-sama. I will do everything within my power to try and make up for the pain I have caused you. Kyubi declared vehemently. Glad to hear it, Fox, but drop the Naruto-sama crap, it just doesn't seem right coming from someone like you. Besides, it's gonna be hard to be friends if you're always bowing and shit. Kyubi chuckled lightly and nodded its huge head. Sure thing, Kit. Now, if you don't mind, I've got some work to do. Work? What are you up to, Fox? Naruto asked, somewhat suspicious and very curious. Can't tell, it's a surprise. But just wait, I promise you're gonna love it. The enormous demon declared with an amused smirk as he turned around and ejected the young man from his mind. Anko arrived at the hospital drained and dizzy from both the effort of using a long-distance shunshin with two people and also the sheer emotional trauma of what had happened. She was still trying to come to terms with the fact that she had fatally wounded an innocent child who was, in fact, just trying to comfort her. Immediately after she arrived, several doctors and nurses hurried over to where she was, but once they realized who it was that she was carrying, they simply turned and went back to what they were doing. Some of them were even sporting large grins at seeing the demon child near death. What the fuck do you think you're doing? Get over here and help him, 'cause I promise, if this kid dies, a lot of you are going with him. She roared, getting the desired response, as she was suddenly surrounded by anxious doctors trying to assess the boy's condition. It appears as though the wound has already closed, but that he had lost a lot of blood. Even with the boy's condition, it will take him a few days to recover. The apparent lead doctor announced after a few minutes of frantic assessment. Nurse, take the boy to the private ward, and make sure he gets extra special treatment. He ordered with a sickening smirk. Anko was sorely tempted to repeat the child's wounds on the doctor right then, but decided that the child took preference for now. Picking him back up into her arms, since none of the staff wanted to be near him, she followed the obviously terrified nurse to a room on the far side of the hospital, in what appeared to be an abandoned wing that had been closed for years. Ignorant pricks probably trying to keep him away from the normal patients. She thought bitterly as she lowered him into the ragged bed. Turning back to the door, she noticed that the nurse was gone, probably fled for fear of her life from the demon and the snake whore. Fighting the urge to massacre the lot of them, She locked the door and collapsed into the chair near his bed, her wild emotions catching up to her as she began to sob quietly, letting out the anger and fear and regret that had been racking her since the incident less than half an hour ago. Anko was woken some time later by a gentle hand on her shoulder. She was startled both because she hadn't realized she fell asleep and because she was sure that she had locked the door so no one could hurt the kid. She relaxed when she looked up and saw the concerned eyes of the Hokage looking down at her. Forgetting all sense of pride and proper behavior, she latched onto the small, but powerful man and began to cry again. The old man just held her close and rubbed her back soothingly, letting her get it out of her system. After a few minutes the crying stopped and she pulled back to look at his face. Hokage-sama, I'm so sorry. It was an accident, the kid found me in the forest and she couldn't continue and the Hokage saw the tears starting to well up in her eyes again. Shish, calm down Anko-chan, I know you wouldn't do something like this on purpose, and you did the right thing by bringing him here and not trying to hide the truth from me. Besides, the doctors say that the boy will be completely recovered without so much as a scar in a few days, so no real damage was done. Now why don't you go home and get some real rest? I'm sure you could use it after today's events. He said lovingly, his warm smile like morning sunshine to the emotional woman. Anko wiped the forming tears from her eyes and shook her head. Actually, Hokage-sama, I would rather stay here and keep an eye on the boy. Some of the doctors were less than helpful and I want to make sure no one tries anything while he's vulnerable. She explained, her face displaying an interesting combination of concern and contempt. Sarutobi gave her a kind smile and nodded, of course dear. Though, as he was leaving he gave a perverted smile and added, just try not to do anything too inappropriate with him, he is just a child after all. Anko's face went bright red, first from embarrassment, then anger. What? She yelled, trying to cover up her blush. Sarutobi just chuckled, relax, it's just a joke. Besides, everybody knows once you put on that forehead protector you're legally an adult, so there's nothing wrong with that. He declared with a straight face. She just stared at him in shock that he would suggest something like that in such a serious tone. That is, of course, assuming he's awake and a willing participant. He added quickly before running out the door laughing like a madman. That's the guy the first aspired to be like. Geez. No wonder people said I was crazy for wanting to be Hokage. Anko turned around and her face turned an even brighter shade of red when she saw Naruto sitting up in his bed looking straight at her with a goofy grin on his face. For a moment she just stared at him. Then she noticed his eyes. They were different. Instead of the sorrow and loneliness she had seen earlier, they now seemed to hold innocence and pure joy, like the eyes of a normal child. Was I just imagining what I saw before? She thought, before looking closer. No, this new expression isn't real, he must be using a mask to hide his pain like I do. She shook her head and decided to put those thoughts aside for now. How are you awake? The doctors said you'd be out for a few days at least. She asked. Naruto shrugged. The fox said he had some stuff to take care of and didn't want me bugging him, so he told me to wake up. He said like it happened every day. Anko on the other hand was shocked by what she'd just heard. Wait, you mean you can talk to the Kyuubi? She yelled. The blonde sighed. That's what I said, isn't it? Geez, for an interrogation expert you're not a very good listener. He said flatly. What did you say, brat? She screamed, stalking towards him. Whoa, don't kill me, it's not like I tried to give you a hug or anything, he said sarcastically. This made Anko freeze and the color drain from her face, remembering why he was in that hospital bed in the first place. She looked away from him as she felt the tears forming in her eyes again. Look, Naruto, I'm really sorry for, she started, but was cut off. Look, don't worry about it. I shouldn't have moved in a situation like that, so it was partly my fault anyway, and like Eroji-san said, there was no lasting damage done, so let's just forget about it. He offered simply. She was shocked that he could be so forgiving, and that just made her feel worse for not trusting the kid in the first place. Then it occurred to her what he said about the Hokage. Wait, You heard that stuff the old man said? She asked, blushing slightly. Sure did. And you've gotta admit, we would be an interesting couple. The demon brat and the crazy snake lady has a nice ring to it, don't ya think? He joked with a chuckle. She just stared at him open-mouthed for a second, totally speechless. Like I would ever go out with a brat like you. And where the fuck did you get crazy snake lady from? She yelled once she regained the ability to settle down. I was just joking, you're not exactly my type either. And as for the name, that's easy. You're quite obviously both crazy and a lady, as demonstrated by the mood swings in that outfit of yours, and the snake thing is cause for some reason you smell like a combination of cinnamon, jasmine and snakes. Hence, crazy, snake lady, it has a better ring than crazy cinnamon lady, don't you think? He asked with a foxy grin. Anko just stared at him, again rendered speechless by the surprising blonde. What do you mean I'm not your type? And what's wrong with my outfit? She yelled, once again stalking towards him threateningly. That's what you picked up from that speech. I thought you'd be more pissed about the mood swings crack. He declared incredulously. Anko paused to consider this for a moment. Why was I so upset about the type thing? She thought to herself, but she quickly disregarded it. The old man must have been right. I do need a good rest. Yo Anko-chan, you okay? You totally just spaced out on me. He said, snapping her out of her thoughts. Anko-chan, when did that happen? She asked with a smirk, hoping she had caught him off guard. He shrugged. Meh, I like you. You've got more spunk and personality than most of the people I know put together. Plus you brought me here to try and save me, even if you the one who did it and I had already healed for the most part on my own. That earns you a chan in my book any day. Anko smiled at the young shinobi's explanation. Alright, just don't let it get out. I've got a reputation to uphold, you know, she said with a smirk. He smirked back. Well, we wouldn't want to upset your rep, crazy snake lady it is. He declared happily. She narrowed her eyes, then let it go. I guess it doesn't really matter what you call me. It's not like we're gonna be hanging out or anything, she said with a fake thoughtful expression. It quickly disappeared though when she noticed his face became downcast. There's that look again, like in the forest. How can someone so young have eyes with more pain than mine? She thought to herself. I've gotta do something to cheer this kid up. Actually, since I did kind of almost kill you, I guess I do owe you one, so how about we go grab something to eat, my treat? She said absently, like she didn't really care. She could instantly see the change in his demeanor before he caught it and tried to look indifferent to the idea. Sure, just give me a sec to clean up, don't wanna get the villagers all excited by the sight of me covered in blood, he finished with a grin. She grinned back, okay, just hurry up, I'm not renowned for my patience. Yeah, keep your coat on, or not, either way, I'm not fussed, he said as he moved to the sink in the attached bathroom, washing the blood from his face, neck and hands. Arogaki. She muttered, causing both to chuckle as he finished washing up. Okay, let's go, he said when he came out. Anko was leading them through the crowded streets towards the business district of the village, all the while taking note of the hateful stares and mumbled comments that followed Naruto as they walked. Whilst he was obviously ignoring them, she was becoming more and more infuriated by the ignorant fools. Especially as they reminded her of how she was, and still is, to a much lesser degree, treated as a result of her connection to Orochimaru. Though even when things were at their worst for her, they weren't like this. How do you do it, kid? She asked lowly, so that only he could hear. He sighed. You get really good at ignoring it after 13 years of the same shit, he said in a soft, sad tone. Hearing this just made her even angrier at the thought of him receiving this kind of treatment even when he was just a child, and yet the look on his face told her that this was far from the worst he had experienced. What the fuck did they do to you? She thought to herself. Suddenly she heard Naruto yell out in pain. She looked to his head and saw a small trickle of blood forming from the behind his right ear. She looked around the crowd that had begun to move away from them, sensing something was about to happen and noticed a group of men standing facing them, one of them holding a few rocks with a cocky grin on his face. "Did you chuck that?" she yelled to the man. His grin only grew bigger. "Damn straight I did. Sweet shot too. Looks like I even made the brat bleed," he said proudly, with his friends congratulating him on hurting the child. "Oh, I'm gonna enjoy this," Anko said with an angry grin, as she took out a kunai and prepared to attack the group. Before she could, Naruto appeared in front of her and grabbed the hand with the kunai in it. "Just let it go, Anko-chan, I don't want you getting in trouble over me," he said calmly, looking pleadingly into her eyes. For a moment she just stared at him, surprised by his speed and strength at being able to stop her with one hand. Then she realized what he said and thought about it. Finally she relaxed her stance and lowered her weapon. "All right, kid, let's go," she said before turning to the villagers. "You better be thankful, 'cause the kid just saved your pathetic lives." With that they began to walk off, but the lead villager called out, "You bitch. It's bad enough you were that traitor Orochimaru, but now you're the demon's whore too. You must really." He didn't get to finish his sentence as he was suddenly lifted from the ground by his throat by an irate Naruto, who was covered in red chakra and sporting claws, fangs and demonic red eyes. "I don't give a what you retards say or do to me, but I will not hear such things said about my friends. You understand me, shit stain?" he roared, his voice loaded with venom and demonic taint. All the terrified man could do was nod his head, while his friends looked on in terror, too afraid to do anything but piss themselves and quake in fear. As quickly as it came, Naruto's demonic features and chakra retracted and he threw the man to the ground. "Now if you don't mind, we'll be on our way," he said calmly before turning and walking back to where Anko was standing wearing a face-splitting grin. "Naruto-kun, that was awesome. If you ever want a job in interrogation, our doors are open," she declared cheerfully. The blonde smirked. "Naruto-kun. When did that happen?" he asked, using her words from earlier. Anko smiled. "Hey, anybody who defends my honor whilst displaying speed, strength and vocabulary that literally made some piss themselves deserves a kun in my book any day." They both laughed and continued walking down the street, enjoying the wide berth everyone in the normally crowded area was giving them. After 5 more minutes of walking without incident, Anko led them into a small bar, called the Hanging Leaf. "A bar? I thought we were getting food," Naruto asked, looking around the dark room. It seemed nice enough, cleaner than most bars of that size, and there was some decent music on in the background, though it was quiet enough to still be able to talk easily. "We are. This place does the best dango. It's my favorite spot. In fact, most of the Junin from the village like to hang out here." Naruto nodded, trusting her opinion on the matter, though he couldn't help but think he was missing something. Seeing the unsure look on his face, Anko tried to convince him. "Come on, trust me, it'll be fun," she said playfully, putting her arm around his shoulders and giving him a confident smirk. It seemed to work until, "Naruto. What are you doing here? And why are you with Anko? And why are your clothes covered in blood?" Kakashi asked, popping up from seemingly nowhere. "Ah," Naruto muttered under his breath, but Anko caught it since she still had her arm over him. "Kakashi, how do you know the kid?" Anko asked, since she hadn't noticed the two ever meeting before and Kakashi's presence seemed to be upsetting her young friend. "I'm his sensei, Anko. I thought you would have known that," Kakashi answered curtly, earning a growl from Naruto, who didn't appreciate his tone. This made Kakashi raise an eyebrow, wondering what the relationship between the two of them was, especially considering the way she was leaning on him. "Really? I didn't know you had a team. I thought you just took the Uchiha brat as an apprentice since you never mentioned anyone else," Anko said in a genuinely surprised tone, eliciting another, even angrier growl from Naruto. "Never mind that. Naruto, answer my questions," Kakashi said rudely. Naruto clenched and unclenched his fists, trying to remain calm despite the obvious insults his sensei was throwing around. Anko saw this and understood completely, but knew it would be bad for Naruto if he lost it like before, Take it easy, Kakashi. Me and Naruto just ran into each other earlier and I accidentally gave him a little cut, hence the blood, and to make up for it I'm treating him to some lunch. See, no problem. Come on, Naruto. See you later, Kakashi. She said as she started to walk towards a table with her arms still over Naruto to bring him along. Kakashi grabbed onto Naruto's arm and pulled him back so that he was facing him. You will answer questions when I ask them and you will not leave until you have been dismissed. You got that, Genin? The copy nin commanded, placing extra emphasis on Naruto's rank. Naruto's eyes flashed red and he could feel his teeth and nails growing as he almost lost his control. Again, Anko saw this and was severely tempted to let Naruto knock the arrogant Junin down a few pegs, but knew the trouble wouldn't be worth it, so she gave his arm a reassuring squeeze, trying to calm him down. Naruto felt the relaxing sensation and looked into Anko's eyes, which seemed to be pleading with him to calm down. Kakashi saw Naruto look away from him and took it as a sign of disrespect and grabbed the boy by the front of his jacket, lifting him so they were eye to eye. Kakashi, that's enough, Anko yelled, shocked at her former friend's behavior. Don't worry, Anko-chan. It's okay, Naruto said, interrupting her and taking a deep, calming breath. I'm sorry, sensei. I assure it won't happen again, he promised calmly, all the while looking Kakashi dead in the eye. Be sure that it doesn't or I'll be forced to put you on report. The masked shinobi spat, then dropped him harshly before turning and walking back to his table where Asuma and Guy were staring at him with shocked faces, obviously surprised by his behavior. Come on, Naruto-kun, let's go somewhere else, this place seems to be full of tonight, Anko said, glaring at the silver-haired nin's back. Thanks, Anko-chan, but I'm not really hungry anymore, maybe some other time, Naruto replied, turning to leave. Sure, Naruto-kun, I'll see you round, she said, not really knowing what she should do. Yeah, see you round. And with that he disappeared in a swirl of red flames. Everyone was shocked to see this. How can he use Shunshin already? And his own variant too. Did you teach him that, Kakashi? Asuma asked his old friend. Him. This pathetic excuse for a ninja probably hasn't taught Naruto-kun a damn thing, too busy focusing on that fucking Uchiha. Anko spat, having trouble holding back from hurting the man who had hurt her. Naruto-kun. Whoa, where the fuck did that come from? My Naruto-kun. Damn, I really need to go to bed and get some rest before I lose it and molest the kid, she thought to herself, ignoring the blush that arose with that particular image. Is that true, Kakashi? Guy asked, with more than a hint of disappointment in his voice. Oh, like you guys do any different? We all know you do the same thing with Neji and Choji, you have to focus on the most promising student, it's just how things are. Kakashi defended angrily. Are you stupid, Kakashi? I don't favor any of my students, and if I did, it would be the one that needed my help the most, not the most promising, as you put it. Asuma yelled back, truly upset that his friend would do something like this. I agree with Asuma. If anyone on my team has gotten special treatment, it'd be Lee, because he needed the most help, but even then I always made sure that my other students didn't suffer because of it. I'm very disappointed in you, Kakashi. Guy added. Kakashi just glared angrily at them. What would any of you know about it? None of your students have a tenth of Sasuke's talent or potential. And besides, the council is well aware of my training methods and they support me fully. He finished with a proud smirk. The council, huh? Well then I take it the Hokage knows about them too, since we report to him, so the only way they'd know was if he told them, right, Kakashi? Anko asked spitefully, knowing the answer already. You can't tell him, Kakashi yelled, realizing the trouble he would be in if the Hokage found out. I'm afraid I have no choice, this is a matter that affects the well-being of not only some of his ninjas but also the village as a whole. We can't have undertrained ninjas carrying out missions, nor can we have incompetent teachers wasting potentially awesome warriors. What are you talking about, potentially awesome? Naruto was the dead last at the academy and failed the Genin exam 3 times. He'll be lucky to stay a Genin for life. Kakashi taunted, his smug grin returning. You're supposed to be a genius, how can you possibly be this dumb? Asuma asked. What are talking about? Kakashi asked, surprised by his tone. What he's talking about, Kakashi, is that Naruto just used Shunshin and he already knows the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, both Junin level techniques that he apparently taught himself. And he has mastered them to the point where he can do shadow clones with only one sign and can use his own original version of the Shunshin. Has your precious Uchiha done anything, even remotely as impressive as that, or has he just been spoon-fed everything and somehow remained an average-level genin at best? Declared an angry voice from behind him. Kakashi slowly turned to see the one who had spoken so harshly to him, though he already knew from the voice who it was. When he finally looked up, he was face to face with an extremely pissed-off Hokage. Hokage-sama, I can explain, the copy nin started only to be cut off. I'm sure you can, Hitaki, but frankly I've heard enough of your inane bullshit for one day. Get out of my sight before I show you why I was feared during the Shinobi Wars. Sarutobi commanded, his tone sending shivers through everyone who heard it. The terrified copy nin nodded and left using the standard leaf Shunshin. What the hell happened to him? He used to be a great shinobi. The old man asked with a weary sigh. He still is, Hokage-sama, but a great shinobi doesn't necessarily mean a great teacher. Guy offered, though he too was wondering what had happened to the man he once proudly declared to be his rival. Perhaps you are right. Regardless, I think Kakashi's team would benefit from a new sensei. But who should I get to replace him? Anko stepped forward. You're volunteering, Anko? The Hokage asked, surprised by her action. Actually, Hokage-sama, I was going to suggest that the best thing to do in this situation is to disband the team entirely. She stated, getting confused looks from everyone. Care to explain, Anko? Sarutobi asked, considering the option. Well, the Uchiha kid is actually best off with Kakashi, due to his knowledge of ninjutsu and familiarity with the Sharingan, that is assuming he pulls his finger out and makes the kid do some work. She said the last part spitefully. And Naruto, considering his special circumstances, would likely benefit from personalized and one-on-one training. And though I don't know anything about the last member, I'm sure they'd be better off with someone else too. She explained. When she finished, everyone was staring at her silently. What? I can be sensible when I want to be. I didn't fluke my way to Junin, you know. She said defensively. The Hokage shook his head. Anyway, I will need some time to think about the best solution to this situation. I want all of you in my office tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp, since this will probably affect each of you. Understood? He asked, getting a chorus of, Hi Hokage-sama. Before he left in a swirl of leaves. It was early the following morning and Naruto found himself being awoken by the sun, something that he certainly wasn't happy about. He wasn't what anyone would call a morning person, especially when he'd been up late, training to the point that he passed out from exhaustion. He had spent hours trying out his new skills and abilities. After he had left the bar, he had found himself in the same clearing in the forest of death as from earlier and had no idea how he had done it. After failing to come up with a reasonable explanation by himself, he turned to the fox for help. Flashback. He had decided to contact the Kyuubi for answers, but quickly ran into a problem. He had no idea how to contact the sealed demon. He remembered Kyuubi saying that he could read his thoughts last time they met, so he decided try meditating and he soon found himself in a familiar dungeon. Ah Kit, good to see you again. What brings you to my humble abode? The Kyuubi asked in a far too cheery manner. Naruto shook his head, deciding that a cheery biju was too weird, even for him. Whatever. Look Fox, do you know anything about what just happened and how the hell I got here so fast? The boy asked. Kyuubi put on a fake shocked face. Oh, so you used that already, huh? Well, did you like it? Kyuubi asked, avoiding the question. Used what? What have you done to me? Naruto screamed, becoming frustrated and afraid, having been told on numerous occasions how dangerous it could be to trust his prisoner. Well, you remember how I said I was gonna work on some things for you? Well, one of them was implanting all of my knowledge of jutsu into your memory banks. To put it simply, you now know every jutsu I do. What you just did was a technique you humans call shunshin, though to use it subconsciously is quite impressive. I did a better job than I thought. Kyuubi declared proudly. What? You can do that? Naruto yelled, clearly shocked by this new information. Yeah, I can, but it wasn't easy, let me tell you. Still, it was easier than some of the other stuff I've been working on. Kyuubi mumbled the last part, thinking that the boy couldn't hear him, though since he is larger than the Hokage Tower, it was easily picked up by the Jinchuruki. What the hell else have you done to me? Naruto yelled, furious that his body and mind were being messed with. Kyuubi decided to come clean, since the boy would find out soon enough anyway. Well, the first thing I did was work on improving your body. As you probably noticed earlier during that scuffle, you are now considerably stronger and faster than before. And before you say it, I set up a high-level genjutsu which will allow the effects to become visible gradually over time, so no one should be too suspicious about them. Naruto relaxed at this. He could already imagine the trouble it would cause if he suddenly grew taller or more muscular. Well, thanks, I guess, though, I feel kind of bad. Isn't this like cheating? I mean, I feel like I should have to work for these things like everyone else has too. The blonde explained, sounding guilty. Surprisingly, the demon lord sighed. Look, Kit, I know you probably don't like the idea of me doing this for you, but consider this compensation for all the struggling and suffering you had to endure throughout your life. I would not be doing this for you if I didn't know that you had earned it. Besides, that Uchiha bastard is being given essentially the same thing, though not to the same extent, but like I said, you deserve it more than him. Naruto thought about this for a while. Sure, he had to admit that he did like the new power and knowledge he'd been given, but he still felt kind of guilty for not doing anything to earn it, at least in his mind. Kyuubi had said that he had earned it through suffering, and he couldn't deny that he had had his fair share of that. Maybe it was time for him to get to do something the easy way. You know what, Fox? You're right, maybe I can just accept this gift, thanks. He said sincerely. You have no need to thank me, Kit. I'm just trying to say you back for all the shit you've taken cause of me over the years. Besides, I haven't even told you the best part yet. Kyuubi said with an appropriately foxy grin. Wait, there's more. What more could you do? Naruto asked, excited and still somewhat apprehensive. He didn't know how many more surprises he could take today. Well, in your research about me, I assume you heard about how each of the Biju have a certain trait or ability, right? Naruto nodded, eyes wide as he guessed where this was going. Well, like Ikibi has control over sand or Nibi has control over fire. I too have a special ability, complete physical manifestation and control over chakra. Basically, I could project my chakra into the world and have it take whatever shape or properties I wanted. That, when combined with my near-limitless chakra reserves, is what made me the most powerful of the Biju. Kyuubi smiled, seeing the boy's face light up with anticipation. And now I have given this power to you. Now, granted, I wasn't able to give you all of my chakra permanently because it would either kill you or turn you into a demon. But, what I have done, is drastically increase the rate at which our chakras are merging. That means that in about a year or so you will have all of my chakra. And since it will be merged with yours, it will be totally harmless and you won't grow tails or anything. In the meantime though, try not to use my chakra unless absolutely necessary. I'm still not sure what effect it may have on you. The demon warned gravely, getting a nod from the boy. Sure thing, Kyuubi-sensei. I'll only use your chakra if there is no other choice. The blonde promised, practically bouncing with excitement over his new abilities. Kyuubi-sensei? The demon asked, somewhat puzzled by the new title. Sure. I mean, you did just teach me a bunch of stuff, didn't you? Makes you more of a sensei than Kakashi has been, so I figure it fits. Anyway, I'm anxious to try out some of my new stuff, so I'll talk to you later, sensei. Kyuubi nodded with a grin, and soon Naruto found himself back in the real world, where he eagerly set about testing his new abilities. Flashback end. And so, Naruto had spent the rest of the night going through the knowledge and abilities that he had gained from his tenant. He discovered quickly that the fox didn't actually know very many jutsu, mostly because he never really needed them. He knew a few basic elemental techniques, such as low-level fire and water jutsu, and some ninja skill techniques like the shunshin and replacement jutsu, from when he would take human form and screw with the villagers, but his primary ability had always been his chakra manifestation, so this is what Naruto spent the bulk of his time practicing. It took some effort at first, mostly due to the blonde's still less than impressive chakra control, but eventually he managed to pull the chakra out and get it to maintain a shape for a few minutes. He had found that when he concentrated hard enough, he could get his chakra to take any form he wanted, from sharp claws and blades to dense, club-like weapons. He found the easiest way to do this was to gather the chakra around one of his body parts, especially his hands, then form it into the desired shape. He figured that with practice it would become easier and he might be able to make more complex and versatile shapes and maybe even projectiles. He had also inadvertently discovered that when the chakra was covering a body part, it protected it to a certain extent. Once he discovered this, he tried to cover his entire body, creating a sort of protective shroud. Unfortunately, he simply didn't have that level of control yet, so he could barely manage to cover his arms. He decided to continue working on that technique, as it could prove invaluable during battle. Overall, though, he was very pleased with his improvements and couldn't wait to try them out in a real combat situation. Though in reality he was beginning to doubt he would ever get such a chance, since his team had so far only done dozens of those pointless D-rank missions. And it didn't look like that would be changing anytime soon. And even if it did, he would probably be used as a human shield for the precious Uchiha. Even so, he decided that he should head to his scheduled team meeting, especially since after the altercation at the bar yesterday, he didn't want to piss off Kakashi any more than he already had, though secretly he was hoping for a chance to test out some of his new abilities on his bastard sensei, or teammates. When he got to their meeting place, what he found shocked him. The entire team was there waiting for him, even his ever-tardy squad leader. And all of them looked pissed at him. Naruto sighed internally. He just knew this was gonna be a test of his patience and restraint. Unfortunately, he wasn't known for either. Kakashi was pissed. No, he was irate. Furious even. Not only had Naruto skipped out on training yesterday, but then he and that of a special Junin Anko had disrespected him in front of all of his peers. Which, in turn, got him chewed out by the Hokage himself. And then today he finds out that he is supposed to take his whole team to a meeting with the Hokage at 9 a.m., and the Hokage had threatened to dock him a month's pay if he was even 1 minute late. So, he had shown up on time to take his team to the meeting, but that damn, blonde-headed brat was nowhere to be found, and now they were running late and he was probably going to be the one to pay for it. So when the kid finally did show up, he did absolutely nothing to discourage the beating that he was sure was going to happen when his pink-headed student saw him. In fact, he just smirked when the little banshee had screeched the kid's name and launched at him, aiming to take his head off with a right hook. What he didn't expect was for Naruto to catch the girl's fist and turn it into a simple restraining arm lock. "You better cut this shit out now, Sakura, cause this is your first and last warning. I'm not gonna take it anymore," he told her in a cold tone that made Sakura and even Sasuke shiver a bit. "Naruto, release her now," Kakashi commanded, not at all happy with how that turned out. "Fine, Hataki-san." He spat with disdain before letting her go with a harsh push, sending her stumbling away from him. "Hey, why didn't you call him Kakashi-sensei like we're supposed to?" Sakura shrieked, still somewhat shaken up by what the dead last had done to her. "I'll call him sensei if and when he actually teaches me something. Until then he has not earned such a respected title and therefore shall not receive it," Naruto answered, again in that cold tone. Kakashi narrowed his eyes at this and wanted to take the kid down a few pegs, but they were late as it was, so he decided to let it go for now. Come on, we've wasted enough time. We're supposed to be meeting the Hokage in his office, and thanks to someone, we're already late. The copy nin sneered, glaring at the blonde. Naruto just shook his head at the hypocrisy of the white-haired Junin telling him off for being late. He then used his shunshin to go ahead while the others proceeded on foot. Anko was in the Hokage's office, waiting for Team 7 to arrive. Kurenai, Asuma and Guy were also there, along with the Hokage and Iruka, who was acting as the Hokage's assistant until the new year started at the academy. She just laughed when most of the others jumped as Naruto arrived in a burst of red flames. He looked around, taking note of the people in the room. When he saw her, his smile grew to a full-on face splitter, and she was happy to see that he seemed to be over his little funk from yesterday. Hey old man, Iruka-sensei, Anko-chan. I heard you wanted to see me. Naruto said, not taking his eyes of Anko, a fact that nobody failed to notice, causing some to chuckle and others to furrow their brows in confusion. Yes, I did, but I'm afraid that we'll have to wait till the rest of your team shows up. You don't happen to know when that will be, do you? The Hokage asked, already displeased that he was having to wait after threatening Kakashi not to be late. Probably a few minutes. They left at the same time as me, but since I used my shunshin, I got here a little quicker, he said with a smirk, finally looking at the Hokage when he gave his answer. Sarutobi just nodded. How did you learn that technique, Naruto-kun? It's obvious Kakashi Tem didn't teach it to you, so how come you can use it? Anko asked. The others were curious about this also, though Kurenai was more interested by the Anko-chan, Naruto-kun thing, hoping it wasn't anything too inappropriate for both their sakes. Naruto hesitated for a second. He wasn't sure how to explain that. If it was just Anko or the Hokage or even Iruka, he might explain the truth, but he had never met the other three and didn't know if he could trust them. So he decided to lie for now, then tell them the truth later. Luckily for him, he didn't have to explain anything right then, because the door suddenly opened and the rest of Team 7 entered, all looking out of breath and even more pissed at Naruto. How the hell did you do that? I demand that you show me how to do that move. Sasuke yelled. Naruto glared back at him. First of all, you can't demand shit off me, you pathetic emo crybaby. I don't answer to you. Secondly, even if I wanted to teach it to you, which I don't, you wouldn't be able to do it, because you've got fuck all chakra and shit control over what you do have. So how about you get the fuck out of my face before I'm tempted to do something you'll regret? Naruto commanded, with so much power and authority in his voice that made even the Hokage flinch. For a while after the little outburst, everyone was silent, most staring in shock at Naruto, wondering where all of that came from. Anko, on the other hand, was fighting not to break out laughing since she figured it wasn't the time or place. She was, however, sporting a face-splitting grin. For a very long time she had wanted to see someone put the Uchiha brat in his place, and the fact that Naruto had done it, and so well too, let's just say that Anko was having a very good day so far. Nice kid, I have seriously gotta get you over to the interrogation department, Ibiki would love you. Anko said as she walked over and slung an arm around him. All of the older nin shuddered at that thought. If the kid was like this now, what would he be like if Ibiki actually gave him some training? Sarutobi even considered it. The boy definitely had presence when he wanted to. Maybe he should give interrogation a try. I dunno, I've always seen myself more as a front-line kind of guy. He paused for a moment as if considering it. Then again, if I get to spend more time with you, maybe I should consider it, he said with a smirk, whispering the last part in her ear so only she could hear. Anko actually blushed at the comment and couldn't help but feel a little turned on by the feeling of his breath on her ear. She quickly shook her head to regain her composure, almost unable to believe the kid had actually gotten to her. She grinned widely. I'm really starting to like this kid. He makes things interesting, and he defiantly knows how to play the game, but at the same time he's obviously very kind and caring to the people who he cares about. Hell, He even tried to help me out, and not because of pity or because he was trying to get between my legs, but because he knows my pain better than anybody else could. Now if only he didn't look like a damn 10-year-old, he'd be perfect. Maybe in a few years, after I get him to ditch that god-awful jumpsuit. For now though, I'll just settle for playing with the him, she thought to herself as she leaned closer into his body, making sure he could feel her tits pressed against him. Careful Naru-kun, you might bite off more than you can chew. She purred into his ear before quickly stepping away like nothing had happened. Naruto on the other hand blushed redder than a tomato and had to fight to keep from passing out right there. The Hokage who, like everyone else, had been watching the exchange with mouth open and bulging eyes, cleared his throat. Well then Anko, if you're done molesting the children, maybe we can finally get this meeting started. Anko just chuckled and rubbed the back of her head sheepishly. Ah, sorry Hokage-sama, guess I got a little carried away, please continue. Right, well we are here today to discuss the future of Team 7. The old man declared, getting the attention of everyone present, including Kakashi, who looked like he was about to speak up but was cut off by the Hokage. Wait till I'm finished, you will get a chance to speak, Kakashi. Now, as I said, we are here to discuss what is going to be done regarding Team 7. In light of some recent and not so recent revelations, it is apparent that a change is needed, and I believe that I have come up with a solution that will benefit everyone, though some of you may not see it that way at first. He announced, looking straight at Sakura, which made her feel even more nervous about the situation. It seems to me that this team has completely failed in getting along, and frankly all of you are to blame for it. Naruto Uzumaki, you have displayed serious issues with respecting those above you, and despite the reasons, this will not be allowed to continue. Is that understood? The Hokage asked, looking fiercely at the blonde in question. Hi Hokage-sama, you have my word that it will not happen again, he said with conviction and humility in his voice. Kakashi wanted to laugh, but knew better than to do so at the moment. Sasuke however didn't. He let out a triumphant grunt and smirked at Naruto. Sasuke Uchiha, you have displayed nothing but arrogance and contempt for both your teammates and this village. And furthermore, you have intentionally disrespected many of your superiors. Consider this your official notice, Uchiha. Your name does not mean you are above the rules, and should I feel the need, you will be punished severely. Do not doubt me on this. Sasuke looked like he was ready to do something very stupid out of anger, and Kakashi quickly put his hand on his shoulder and gave him a look that said, don't even think about it. Sasuke managed to restrain himself, though only just. Sakura looked almost ready to cry, seeing her precious Sasuke-kun get told off. But then things got worse as he turned to look at her. You, Sakura Haruno, ever since your first day in the academy, you have shown absolutely no dedication or even interest in becoming an actual ninja, and frankly people like you are the reason why kunoichi are disrespected and undervalued. You are a disgrace to kunoichi everywhere and you make me sick. He spat viciously. Everyone was shocked at how hard the normally friendly Hokage was on the girl, but Anko and Kurenai couldn't agree more, having experienced the difficulties of being a kunoichi firsthand. The Hokage then turned to Kakashi. And you, Kakashi, I was expecting great things from you, considering your record and who your teacher and father were. But then you disgrace their memories by favoring one of your students too heavily, causing him to become arrogant and lazy. And even worse, you totally ignored your other two students because of this. I am truly disappointed in you, Kakashi, the old man declared, looking away as though he couldn't stand the sight of the man. He then paused and took a deliberate breath, as he regained his composure following his tirade. As a result of these reasons I am, effective immediately, disbanding Team 7. There were shocked gasps from all the members of Team 7, although only Naruto seemed to be happy about the news. But then what happens to me? I need to continue my training so that I can become strong enough to kill my brother. I demand that you give me personal trainers so that I can get stronger. If you don't, I'll make sure you and this pathetic village pay. The enraged Sasuke yelled, slamming his hands down on the Hokage's desk. Immediately, he was being restrained by two Anbu, with another two holding kunai at his throat and heart respectively. At that moment everyone in the room except Kakashi, Sakura and Sasuke were thinking the same thing: how could anybody be that stupid? You don't openly threaten the Hokage and the village, in his office, surrounded by no less than 9 witnesses, 5 of whom are Junin of that village. What the fuck is wrong with you fools? I am the last Uchiha. I demand you let me go at once. As Sasuke continued to rant and scream traitorous threats, the Hokage looked at one of the Anbu and gave a quick nod. The Anbu have Sasuke a quick blow to the back of the head, knocking him out instantly. Everyone gave a sigh of relief that it was finally quiet. Whoa, I knew he was a fool, but who knew he was that crazy? Naruto said quietly, shaking his head, causing Anko to chuckle. Yes, well, he needs to be evaluated, that's for sure. Take him to the holding cells, I'll deal with him later. Sarutobi said solemnly, already feeling the headache the council was going to give him over this. Well then, now that distraction is over, I can finish what I was saying. I was actually going to place Sasuke with some private trainers anyway, but after that outburst he'll be lucky to avoid jail time, let alone remain a ninja. Oh well, Kakashi, I'm sending you back to Anbu, since it is painfully obvious you aren't teacher material. Kakashi sighed but nodded and gave a quick, yes sir. Sakura Haruno, you are currently deemed unfit to remain an active ninja of this village and therefore, are being sent back to the academy until you prove yourself truly worthy of wearing that leaf symbol. Sakura started to sob, but also nodded and gave a, yes sir. Sarutobi then looked to Naruto who gulped, fearing what his fate might be. Naruto Uzumaki, in order to continue your impressive growth and improvements you shall be given special tutoring under various instructors, namely Guy, Kurenai and Asuma here, as well as anyone else your new master feels would aid in your development. Everyone stood in total silence, nobody had been expecting that, even Anko who kind of suggested the idea. Excuse me Hokage-sama, Naruto said carefully, remembering what the old man had said about him showing respect. The Hokage smirked at the change, thinking he had finally gotten through to the kid. I assume you want to know who your new master is, right? He asked, getting a nod from the blonde. Hi Hokage-sama. He said excitedly but still carefully, so as to still be respectful. Well, it happens to be someone that you already know, in fact they are in this room right now. He said with a smile, hoping the boy would be happy with his choice. Naruto looked around the room then back to the Hokage, Iruka-sensei. Everyone else in the room instantly face vaulted, even the usually stoic Anbu guards. Naruto just started laughing hysterically. Everyone quickly recovered realizing it was a joke. Sorry, but I couldn't resist, it was just too sweet a shot. Anko stepped up and smacked him on the back of the head. Brat. This is why everybody thinks you're stupid. Naruto rubbed the lump on his head and smiled sheepishly. Sorry Anko-sensei. I'll be good, don't worry. He promised with a happy grin. That's better kid. Now, if there is nothing else, I'd like to get started on my new apprentice's training. Anko said with a sadistic smirk, making Naruto gulp and everyone else pity the poor kid. Ah, sure Anko, go for it, just talk to the others when you want them to help him out. She gave a nod and looked at the others telling them they'd talk about it later, they all nodded back then left. Anko and Naruto were about to leave too, when Sarutobi spoke up again, and Naruto, we all have high expectations of you son, do your best and don't let us down. Naruto smiled back, don't worry Ji-san, I promise I won't and I never go back on a promise. The Hokage and Anko shared a smile and nod as they left. Ji-san huh, well at least it's better than old man, and Hokage-sama just didn't feel right coming from Naruto, so I guess I can let it slide. Sarutobi said quietly with a warm smile. Iruka smiled back and nodded, I just hope Anko doesn't rub off on him too much, Naruto is bad enough as it is, I don't even want to think about him with a sadistic streak, the scarred Chunin said. Both men shuddered at the thought. Maybe I should have given Genma or Ebisu the job instead. I didn't think about an Anko Ised Naruto running loose on the streets. The old man sighed, suddenly feeling his age. I'm getting too old for this crap. Maybe it's time I tracked down one of my students and made them take over so that I can finally retire again. He. Now there is a good idea, and I know just which one to go for too, he thought mischievously. Uruka, I want you to arrange a poker tournament to be held in the village, make sure the prize money is enough to gain international interest. And I want it set for 1 month from now. Uruka could see the evil glint in the aging Hokage's eye and knew he was up to something, but then, who was he to go against the Hokage's wishes? He just sighed and hoped the old man knew what he was doing. Anko was once again leading Naruto through the business district of Konoha, which confused the blonde, since he had thought they were going to start his training. Anko-chan, I thought we were going to start my training, how come we're back here again? Anko stopped and turned to the boy. First of all, this is part of your training, a very important part, which is why we're doing it first. And second, what happened to sensei? She asked seriously. Naruto shrugged. That was just a show for the others. I figured when it was just the two of us, Chan, would be okay. Besides, Anko-chan just seems to fit better, he said, giving her a smile. She frowned a little. Look, Naruto, you're a great kid and I really like hanging out with you, but when we are training I'm gonna have to do stuff which you wouldn't do to a friend, so while we're doing training or on missions, I think it's best if we stick to sensei, okay? Naruto looked down at the ground. He was clearly upset by this change to their relationship. Anko sighed. She really hated seeing this kid sad. It was like looking at a sad puppy, it just wasn't right. Look, it's just during training or missions. Any other time we're hanging out you can call me whatever you want, okay? She reassured him. Naruto looked up at her disbelievingly. Why you still want to be my friend? He asked with a trace of hope in his voice. Anko smiled brightly. Of course. You're just too much fun to not have around. Besides, I can't wait till you tell somebody off again. That thing with the Uchiha was the funniest thing I think I've ever seen, she proclaimed, laughing at the image of Sasuke's stunned and outraged face. Naruto had to laugh too. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I'd been waiting to do that for years. Anko laughed again. I can imagine. I don't know how you lasted as long as you did. I'd have killed him after a week, I'm sure. This time they both laughed, enjoying how easy it was to just relax with the other person. Soon, Anko realized they had reached their destination, so she signaled for her new apprentice to stop. Sensei, what are we doing here? I thought we were gonna do some training, he asked, confused as he looked at the store she had brought them to. Ah, but we are. We're here to fix one of your biggest and most obvious weaknesses, your fashion sense, she said with a devious smile. Naruto gulped. He had a feeling he was not going to enjoy this. The next hour of Naruto's life would always be something that he remembered with a very confusing mix of emotions. There aren't very many things on the list of things that the generally cheerful blonde hates, however, clothes shopping was definitely somewhere near the top. And to make matters worse, Anko had insisted that he couldn't have any orange at all. He had almost cried when he heard her horrific declaration. However, he soon found out that when you're shopping with a friend, it isn't anywhere near as bad, especially when she happens to hate shopping almost as much as you do, so she is happy to rush along with you and not dawdle like many women tended to. She also had pretty similar taste to him, except about orange. For some strange reason she couldn't accept that it was the greatest color of all. Nonetheless, he did end up finding an outfit he liked and she seemed to like it too, so they were both happy. He chose standard black ninja pants and sandals. To add some color, he had picked a blood red short-sleeved shirt, since red was close to orange. He had also done this because he didn't want to be one of those boring ninjas that just wore all black. Anko had agreed, not surprising, considering what she wore was hardly standard issue. As an homage to his new sensei and friend, Naruto also chose to get a coat, though his was sleeveless and black. Once they were happy with the basic look, he bought a few copies of the outfit, and some different colored shirts in case he felt like a change, and Anko sealed them into a scroll for him, since he didn't quite have that down yet. They then moved on to an equipment store. Here Naruto added some protective metal shin and forearm guards to his outfit. They were a charcoal gray color, so they wouldn't be too much of a hindrance during stealth missions, not that stealth was ever Naruto's style, but it didn't hurt to be prepared. Finally he got a few ninja mesh shirts similar to Anko's that would go over his shirt and protect against cutting attacks on his body. It was too thin to stop a strong attack, but it would help against glancing blows. Plus it looked bad, as Anko had put it. With his outfit now complete, Anko decided, much to Naruto's joy, that it was time for some real training, so they both used the Shunshin to go to their clearing, in the Forest of Death. When they arrived, Anko turned to her student. Okay kid, from now on this will be our primary training area. Why here? Naruto asked, though he answered his own question as he looked around the clearing. It was a decent-sized open area, so space wouldn't be an issue. It also had a small stream to one side, should they need water-related training or just somewhere to cool off. For some reason this thought conjured a mental picture of Anko in a bikini, dripping wet coming out of the water. Needless to say, Naruto had to quickly sit down to avoid showing how much his body had appreciated that image. What the hell was that? He thought to himself. Anko blushed slightly, having seen why the boy had quickly sat down. If that's what it's like at 13, what will it be like when he's fully grown? She thought to herself, crossing her arms to hide her own arousal at that thought. Well, as you can see, it covers all the basic terrain settings: grass, dirt, water and trees. Plus it is secluded enough that we can both let go without worrying about damaging the village or any bystanders. And finally, because it's hidden, we don't have to worry about anyone spying or interrupting us, since only you, me and the Hokage know about this place. And before you ask, I had to tell him in case he needed to find us for some reason. She explained in an attempted lecture voice that just seemed wrong coming from the jovial Junin. Fair enough, so what are we gonna start with, Anko-sensei? Naruto asked excitedly. Anko smirked. Gotta love the kid's attitude, she thought to herself. First thing we have to do is have a little spar, so I can see where you are currently at and what needs to be improved. It'll also give you a chance to see my style and some of the moves I'm probably gonna be showing you. We'll do taijutsu only for now. Now, you ready? Good, let's do this. She yelled as she lunged at him. She went for a high spin kick that Naruto quickly ducked and tried for a low sweep, which she leapt over. She then tried for an axe kick as she was coming down, but he rolled out of the way and jumped back, creating some distance between the two. He quickly got into the modified stance that he had learned through Kyuubi's technique transfer. Anko paused for a moment to consider his strange stance. Where did he learn that? She wondered. She then shrugged and decided to ask later, before she charged at him again. The spar continued for about 20 minutes, with both combatants landing their fair share of hits, and though Anko had landed more shots, Naruto seemed less affected by the match as a result of his legendary stamina and the fox's healing. Anko was surprised. His taijutsu was mid to high chunin level at least, and when combined with his stamina, healing and natural tenacity, the kid was a formidable opponent. Hell, with a bit more practice and polish he would be able to beat most Junin in a taijutsu match. Great job, Naruto. If you keep working at it, your taijutsu could rival someone like Kakashi Tem or Asuma. And that style seems to suit you perfectly. I think you'll be better off trying to develop it, rather than trying to learn mine. Just where did you learn it anyway? It's nothing like the academy style, and I know the masked jackass wouldn't have taught it to you. Ah, it's kind of a long story, can we talk about it later? He asked, clearly not ready to explain just yet. Anko frowned at his avoidance. Okay, I guess, but I want an answer soon, got it? He nodded, albeit reluctantly, before his smile came back. Sure, so, what's next? Ninjutsu. I want you to show me all the techniques you've got that I haven't seen already, so you can leave out Shunshin. Anko said in her teacher voice. Naruto nodded and did some hand signs. Kaden. Hidongan Jutsu. He cried, putting a hand to his mouth and spitting out a small, but concentrated burst of fire. Anko nodded, somewhat impressed by the technique, though it certainly needed a lot of work. Naruto did another set of hand signs and called out, Sweden, Mizu Taiho Jutsu. A decent amount of water rose from the lake and fired in a concentrated stream at one of the nearby trees, leaving a considerable mark on the trunk. I know a couple more of each style, but those are my best ones. For some reason it's really hard to convert my chakra to the right element. He explained, looking a little embarrassed. Anko considered this for a moment. It's probably because you have a different elemental alignment. See, everyone's chakra has a natural alignment to at least one of the elements. It's possible that the reason you find those techniques hard is because you are a different type. Naruto nodded. He vaguely remembered Iruka explaining something like that at the academy, though he wasn't really paying attention at the time. Here, channel some chakra into this paper, it'll tell us what type you are. Anko said, handing Naruto a small piece of paper. When he put chakra into the paper, it split down the middle. A wind type, that's rare around here. Luckily for you, Asuma, one of the people who will be helping out with your training, is a wind type, so he can help you out with that and maybe teach you a few wind type jutsu. For now though, are there other techniques you know? Naruto paused for a moment. Well, that's it for jutsu, but I do have another ability. But I've only just started training with it, so I'm not very good yet. That's fine, just show me what you can do with it, she replied, curious about what this mysterious ability could be. Naruto nodded and started channeling chakra into his right hand, covering it in a blue glow. He then formed the ends of the fingers into razor-sharp claws. Anko stared at his chakra-encased hand. How can he do that? Is it shape manipulation or something more? She thought to herself, amazed by the strange ability. Naruto leapt to a nearby tree and swiped at it with his chakra claws, leaving 5 deep slash marks in the wood. Anko's eyes widened considerably and her mouth hung limp for a moment before she regained her composure. Naruto, I think it's time you told me how you learnt these techniques, she said sternly. Anko just stood in shocked silence, staring slack-jawed at her student. He had told her the whole story, from how he was treated as a kid, to meeting Kyuubi and his apology to Kyuubi's attempt at reparations. Wait, so does this mean that you don't actually look like what you look like now? She asked when she finally regained her composure. Naruto shrugged. I guess so, though I don't know what I look like without the transformation since I haven't tried to undo it yet. Do you mind if I see? I mean, it's just the two of us and you know you can trust me, right? Anko asked, hoping that the boy had developed some trust in her. Of course I trust you. You've never given me a reason not to, well except for that one time, he said, rubbing his neck as though it were still hurting. Anko looked down at the reminder of what she had done to him just yesterday, though it felt like so much longer. Naruto saw this and felt bad for reminding her. Hey, I told you not to worry about that, he said, trying to cheer her up. I know, but I still feel. She paused as Naruto gently lifted her head to look at him, though he didn't have to lift very far since he was much shorter than her. Look, if you're still feeling bad about it, how about you take me out tonight? We never did get to eat yesterday. He offered with a warm smile. She into his smiling face and blushed slightly. How does he do that? She thought to herself. He's been through, and is still going through, so much suffering and loneliness. How does he still trust in people, especially me? I almost killed him less than 24 hours ago for fuck's sake. And not only that, but he goes out of his way to make me feel better. You are truly amazing, Naruto-kun. It's a date. For now though, let's get back to training. I want to show you some chakra exercises that might help you with that special trick of yours. and so she spent the rest of the day teaching Naruto various control exercises, including leaf spinning and tree climbing, then water walking once he perfected those too. She was happy to discover that Naruto was actually a very fast learner, when given proper instruction, and by the end of the day, his control had improved drastically. So much so, that he could now extend his chakra limbs a few meters away from his body whilst still maintaining their shape. He could also create a full body shroud, though he couldn't move without losing concentration and dropping the shield. They figured this would change with practice though. Anko had just called a stop to training for the day and Naruto was resting on the ground trying to recover his expended energy. Oh Naruto-kun, I just realized, you never showed me what you really look like. Anko said suddenly. Naruto sat up and looked at her. Hey, you're right, I guess we got distracted and forget. Hey. Might as well try now, I suppose. Just give me a sec, I'll ask Kyuubi how I do it, he stated before beginning to meditate, hoping that this method of contacting the demon would work again. That's not necessary anymore, Naruto. A demonic voice sounded in the boy's head, making him jump slightly. Kyuubi, he asked out loud, getting a strange look from Anko. You shouldn't speak out loud, Kit, people will think you've lost it. Just use your inner monologue. How come I don't need to come to your chamber anymore? He asked internally. I set up a mental connection to make communicating easier. This way you just have to think and I'll hear it. The fox explained. Naruto paused for a moment to consider the implications of this. Wait. Does this mean you can read all my thoughts now? He mentally yelled, feeling thoroughly violated. Unfortunately, yes. By the way, you can no longer claim to be a non-pervert. I've seen those images of your sensei you've been cooking up. I must say even I am impressed by your filthy mind, and I'm a 1,000-year-old demon. Anyway, that's not really the point. What matters is, yes, I can read your thoughts, and yes, it is kind of weird and intrusive, but since I'm little more than another part of you at this point, you shouldn't really be that bothered by it. The demon explained, somewhat uncomfortable with the topic and hoping to move on. Okay, I guess I can live with this. Just don't go trying to turn me into a psychotic killer, okay? The blonde commanded sternly. A gravelly chuckle echoed through his head as the fox laughed. Agreed. Now, as for releasing my transformation jutsu, that's easy, just do the same thing you do for a regular transformation. And when it comes time to reapply it, I'll walk you through it, so you can do it yourself from now on. Great. Thanks, Fox. Naruto then turned his attention back to Anko, who was looking at him with a mix of worry and wonder. Well, she asked expectantly. It's okay, he explained it to me. Well, here we go, he exclaimed before performing the dispelling sign, causing a cloud of smoke to erupt around him. When it cleared, neither was ready for what the result would be. Both of them gasped at the same time and Anko had to seriously struggle to not jump her student and start molesting him, again. Naruto's true form was, simply put, gorgeous. He was 6 foot tall and quite muscular, not overly so, but definitely ripped. His face had lost all trace of baby fat and now displayed strong, rugged features. You could still tell it was Naruto, but he looked to be at least 17 or 18 years old now. Shit, Fox. What did you do to me? Naruto thought frantically in his head, trying to come to terms with what he looked like now. Relax, Kit, I just aged your body a bit. Physically speaking, you are now 16 years old. Frankly, I think it's fitting. Underneath your idiot mask you were always mature for your age, I just made your body catch up a bit. Besides, it was necessary for your upgrades, you can only do so much with a 13-year-old body. Whilst this conversation was happening, Anko was also holding an internal discussion. Holy shit, Naruto-kun is a fucking god. Look at those abs and that chest and those arms in his face. Fuck waiting till the kid is 16, I've gotta snag this bastard now, before anyone else gets a chance. Eventually they both finished their internal talks and looked at each other sheepishly, though for entirely different reasons. Naruto was nervous because Anko hadn't said anything since he transformed, and he was worrying that she might think he was a freak, especially since she was just staring at him, and Anko was nervous cause she realized she had just been caught staring at her student in a less than teacherly manner. Anko-sensei, I understand if you don't want to be around me anymore. It's okay. I can teach myself. I'll even tell the Hokage that you're still training me so you won't get in trouble. He offered weakly, as though his heart had been torn in two, which was pretty much how he felt at the moment. His depressed tone and broken words quickly snapped Anko out of her stupor. Oh God, he thinks I think he's a freak. She thought frantically to herself. Naruto-kun, don't ever think like that. I would never think that you were a freak, and I would never abandon you. I was just shocked is all. You have to admit it takes a bit of getting used to. She explained, causing Naruto's heart to soar, and in an instant, he was leaping to grab her in a tight hug. Unfortunately, he hadn't taken his new size into account when doing so, which resulted in him basically tackling her to the ground, leaving them both in a rather compromising position, causing both of them to blush furiously. Naturally, it was at this time that the Hokage appeared via Shunshin. Sarutobi found himself unsure of what his reaction should be to the situation into which he had just stumbled. He was caught between yelling at them, congratulating them, and simply giggling like a certain perverted student of his. So rather than go with any of these, he chose to remain passive until he knew more about the situation. Okay, so it looks like you two have some explaining to do. Naruto, why don't we start with why it is you look like you've aged 5 years since this morning? He ordered as he calmly sat down, sensing that a long story was coming. Naruto nodded and quickly got off Anko, helping her up and then moving away so that it didn't look too suspicious. He then explained the whole story to the Hokage, who just nodded and listened patiently. When Naruto had finished, Sarutobi took a long puff from his pipe and sighed. So let me see if I've got this straight. Whilst you were in the hospital yesterday, you met with the Kyuubi, who apologized for how you were treated and in order to make amends has taught you several techniques, as well as giving you a unique ability and aging your body approximately 3 years, is that correct? He asked flatly. Yaji-san, that's about it. Naruto confirmed, slightly off-put by the old man's lack of reaction. Okay, so what was with that position I found you two in earlier? He asked, a slight perverted grin making its way onto his wrinkled face. Again the younger two blushed. Well, Anko-sensei had just said she was okay with my new appearance and I was so happy I wanted to hug her, but I kind of forgot about how big I am now, so it ended up being more of a tackle, which led to the position you found us in. The blonde explained nervously, pointedly not looking at Anko since they had stood up. Sarutobi chuckled at both the explanation and the nervous looks on both of their faces. Relax, you two, I believe you. And even if I didn't, there isn't anything in our village's rules about not having a personal relationship with students, even if it is frowned upon by some. Both visibly relaxed at this, though blushed again at the implication that there was something going on between them. Seeing this, the old man couldn't help but take one last jab at the nervous pair. Actually, now that I think about it, you two make a really cute couple, maybe you should give it a try. You never know where it might lead. He proclaimed before letting out a perverted giggle and wiggling his eyebrows suggestively, before disappearing with a swirl of leaves, leaving the aggravated Naruto to miss his tackle attempt and crash into a tree. As the blonde stood up, both of them mumbled about perverted old men and needing to mind their own business. They then looked at each other awkwardly in silence for a full minute before Naruto finally spoke up. Anko-sensei, do you still want to go to dinner or should we just call it a day? He asked nervously. Anko hesitated for a moment, thinking about what Naruto would want to do. I'd still really like to go, Naruto-kun, that is if you still do. She answered with a warm smile. Of course I do, sensei. Just wait a sec while I reapply the henge. Naruto exclaimed before he started to do hand signs according to Kyuubi's instructions. He was stopped, however, when Anko grabbed one of his hands. Naruto looked at her curiously. Sensei, what are you doing? I have to reapply the henge before we can go. But why Naruto-kun? Why should you have to change who you are or what you look like, just to satisfy other people's ignorant fears and prejudices? This is who you are now, and I don't think you should hide anymore. It's time that you stop hiding behind your masks, both of them. Naruto looked at her with complete shock and awe. He thought that nobody knew about his idiot mask, as the Kyuubi had called it. He sighed sadly. Anko-chan, you know as well as I do the trouble that it will cause if I show up in the village like this, especially if I start acting differently too. Everyone will think that the fox has taken over my body. They'll call for my execution, or at the very least banishment. He explained, his voice changing as he let go of his mask. No, I won't let that happen, and neither will Hokage-sama. Please Naruto-kun, I know how hard it is to pretend to be someone you're not, and you've suffered enough because of this village. And I already told you, I will never abandon you, even if that means we have to run away together. She promised, the conviction in her tone clearly showing how serious she was. Naruto was once again completely shaken by Anko's words. But why? You only met me yesterday, why would you give up your life for me? He asked, both of them close to tears at this point, unused to such genuine displays of emotion, since both hid behind their masks to protect themselves. Before you, I didn't have a life in this village. I have no family, no real friends, only acquaintances. The only one who cared for me has been the Hokage. He took me in after Orochimaru cast me aside. But I was still alone. Then you came Naruto-kun. You, who knew pain and loneliness even worse than mine, yet never gave up. You, who is determined to prove to everyone that you are more than what they label you as. You, who despite your own suffering, reached out to me in my time of need and refused to stop caring even after I almost killed you for no reason. You, who defended my honor, even though you hardly knew me and you knew that it would cause you trouble. I can't go back to that miserable existence before you came Naruto-kun, I need you. I love you, she declared, having, by the end, completely lost her control and started to cry powerfully, letting years of pent-up emotions flow out of her. Naruto carefully pulled her into a tight hug, rubbing her back and letting her get it out. After a few minutes she had calmed down somewhat and Naruto had had a chance to think about what she had confessed. At first he couldn't believe it, having never received such a declaration before. Then he decided that she wouldn't lie about such a thing, so she must be telling the truth. He then thought about his own feelings towards her. He was attracted to her, that much was obvious, but it was also something more. He realized that he cared about her more than anyone he'd ever known, even the Hokage or Iruka. He found himself wanting to never be apart from her. In fact, the idea of not having her around was more distressing than anything he had ever experienced. But is that love, attraction, and very strong attachment? He simply didn't know, since he had never experienced love. But then, he had never experienced this feeling either, so maybe this is love. Listen, Anko-chan, I don't know what love is because I've simply never known it. He stated, as she felt her heart starting to break, he's rejecting me. She screamed in her mind and began crying again. Then he continued, I don't know what love is, but what I feel for you is more powerful than anything I've ever experienced, and I cannot even imagine not having you in my life. Anko-chan, so long as you will let me, I want to be by your side, supporting you, comforting you, and loving you. Anko pulled back from his comforting embrace and looked into his beautiful sapphire blue eyes. Slowly their faces began moving towards each other as if drawn by some divine power. Eventually their lips met and their worlds erupted in sensations. The passion and emotion and love that was passed through that kiss shook both of them to their cores and left them gasping for air. In that moment everything was perfect. They looked into each other's eyes and it was as if they were gazing upon their very souls. Every feeling, every sensation passed between them without another word being spoken. Enough had already been said. Unfortunately, the moment was interrupted by loud, simultaneous growls from their stomachs. And in response they did the only thing you can do in such a situation, they laughed till they were laying on the ground gasping for air and holding their sides in pain. Guess it's about time I finally take you up on that offer, hey Anko-chan. Naruto said once he able to form a coherent sentence. What? Oh no, this is our first date, mister, and everybody knows the man pays on the first date. Anko declared in her lecture voice. Naruto smirked. Well then, it's a good thing I'm only 13 and still a boy then, huh? He replied smugly. Anko's eyes narrowed for a moment, then changed as she plastered an evil smile on her face. Well then, since you're just a boy, I guess we'd better stick to just kissing for the next 3 years till you're a man. Naruto's smirk faded to a look of sheer terror and betrayal, which only worsened when she added, that's a shame too, 'cause I had some things planned out that would have made your wildest fantasies look like nursery rhymes. At this point, Naruto was fighting for consciousness as he was about to pass out from twin nosebleeds. Okay, so dinner's on me then. Naruto declared loudly, causing Anko to grin broadly. Glad to hear it. Now let's get going. I get the feeling that I'm gonna need to eat soon to ensure I've got some energy left for other activities. Naruto didn't need any more encouragement, as he picked her up bridal style and sunshine to her favorite restaurant. Anko couldn't help but laugh at the expressions of the various other people in the restaurant. Needless to say, when two people suddenly appear in a swirl of red flames in the middle of a crowded restaurant and they happen to be the infamous Anko Mitarashi, being carried bridal style, by what appears to be the demon brat only 3 years older than he should be and in a new intimidating outfit, well that tends to get a reaction out of people. Most looked just surprised or confused, quite a few looked scared and a few individuals looked more than a little angry. One such person was Kakashi Hatake, former sensei of the now defunct Team 7 and current pissed off drunkard. What the fuck is going on here? And what happened to you, Naruto? He shouted, storming up to the young couple. Naruto carefully put Anko down and sighed, talk about deja vu. He muttered lowly before turning to his former team leader. Look, Kakashi, you're obviously drunk. Why don't you go home before you do something you're gonna regret? Naruto said in an attempt to avoid the inevitable conflict that was coming. Don't you dare talk down to me, you little prick. I still outrank you, so you better show me some proper goddamn respect. Come on, Kakashi, there's no need to do this, just go home. Anko said, already losing her patience with the masked Junin. Stay out of this. Haven't you already meddled enough in other people's business? He shouted, taking a step towards Anko and raising his hand to hit her. Unfortunately, for him, his hand was removed by a blue chakra claw before it even got close to its target. I warned you. Now take your hand and leave, before you lose something else. If you hurry they can reattach it. Naruto said in a cold, emotionless tone. Suddenly a team of Anbu appeared in between to two sides. What happened here? The lead Anbu asked. That fucking demon brat used Kyuubi's powers to cut off my hand and I didn't do anything. Arrest them, Kakashi shouted, holding his stump tightly to try and stem the flow of blood. The Anbu looked at Naruto, then Anko. Is this true? He asked. Not even close. My boyfriend and I were accosted by this drunken idiot as soon as we entered. We tried to resolve the matter peacefully, but he moved to attack me. Naruto, however, intercepted the attack using his own chakra and abilities and defended me. Anko said confidently. Does anyone, other than Kakashi, dispute this explanation? The Anbu asked, looking around the room. No one could dispute it, even if they wanted to. It was clearly the boy's chakra and voice, which could only mean he was in control, not the fox. The Anbu took note of the silence and turned back to Kakashi. In that case, Kakashi Hatake, you are under arrest for breaching the Sandame's law regarding Naruto Uzumaki and the attempted assault of a Konoha Junin. You will be taken to the hospital to receive treatment, after which you shall report to the Hokage, to await sentencing. Let's go. He ordered before two of the Anbu restrained Kakashi whilst another picked up his severed hand and they all left via Shunshin. After they left, Everyone looked over to Naruto and Anko, who had surprisingly sat down together in a booth and were now looking over a menu like nothing had happened. Soon Asuma and Kurenai walked over to them from their own booth. Anko and Naruto looked up from their menus. "Hey guys, what's up?" Anko asked, causing the other couple to sweat drop. "What's up with you guys? You mind telling us what that was all about and how the hell you did that?" Asuma said, obviously shaken up by the previous events. "Look," Kakashi started mouthing off at us, not for the first time I might add. "I warned him, Anko-chan warned him, but he refused to listen. He then insulted both of us, then moved to strike my girlfriend, so I stopped him, using my chakra and technique. The fool then broke the third's law in front of no less than a dozen witnesses including an Anbu squad, so he was arrested. And since the matter was resolved, me and Anko-chan decided to sit down and enjoy our meal." "Any more questions?" Naruto explained calmly. "Yeah, what was that technique? Can anyone use it or is it linked to, you know who?" Kurenai asked quietly, trying not to be overheard. Naruto sighed. "Yes, it was originally his ability, but it is now completely under my control and uses only my chakra. As for can anyone use it, I'm afraid not, though I'm pretty sure that my children will be able to do it." This shocked everybody who had been listening, including Anko. "Wait, so you mean if you have kids they will get it too, like a bloodline?" she asked. "That's right, when we have kids, it's probable that they will be able to